why strategy is important, and how it can help to create an environment in a vocational education institution that brings about sort of a atmosphere of improvement and change and developing activities, and how internationalization can play a role in this. Because of course, at the bottom of it really is the question of the students and the sort of future workforce of our countries, and how they can come in to working life with better skills, the sort of skills that the future world of work needs. And a part of that are definitely international skills, but a part of it are also the kind of maybe more general skills that you can learn in an international environment. And of course, at the background, what kind of skills do the teachers and staff need so that this can come about, and how can we really integrate international activities into the daily improvement work, development work of our institution, but also just the daily teaching and training that takes place. So these are the sort of questions at the background that I see as really important. And I mean, I know you all have a lot of experience, and maybe these are basic to you, but why I list them here as aims also for this session and for the following session that we'll be having today still, is that these are important questions to ask when you go into this strategic journey, the strategy journey that Mari was referring to. Because if you ask the right questions, this journey is much easier. And to ask the kind of questions that lead you in a direction of trying to find areas within your institution to work with, and try to find areas that need development, but also try to find areas where internationalization can be a part of the solution is really important. So not to get sort of lost on the strategy journey into wrong areas. For example, a typical wrong area when we talk about internationalization is to get lost in the world of projects, and the world of financing, and the world of finding more financing through projects and applying for more and more and more. This is, of course, it's a must. I mean, if you want to tap into the resources of the Erasmus Plus program, for example, but it's not the point of it. The point of it is to find the link to your own institution's needs and your regional needs and the business life's needs around your institution, and the world of work, what do they need? So I mean, you can easily get lost on the wrong path, and so it's important to ask the right questions. Well, on this pathway, and when you're asking these questions, there is certainly no lack of information. And it's both a blessing and it's a problem, because the fact is that there's a lot of strategic documents out there. I've listed some of the sort of history of European strategies around vocational education and training here. The newest showing of this is the European Skills Agenda for Competitiveness, Social Fairness, and Resilience from the summer. And this is the moment, the sort of leading strategic document. But there's a long history behind it of different kinds of declarations, the long history of the Copenhagen process, and also a number of other follow-up documents of education and training in Europe. Sort of a monitor has been set up with targets for 2020. This is now being updated, and there is also a number of alliances and different frameworks, such as the Alliance for Apprenticeships at the background, with a lot of own strategic thinking and a lot of own documents and possibilities to tap into. And all of this, of course, is somewhat confusing. Partially can be. I mean, they are not in opposition to each other. They are very well aligned documents, but it's still a big amount of information. But it can also be a real source for you and your thinking if you're able to tap into it and if you're able to analyze this for your own needs. And of course, many of these are familiar to you from before as well. So I mean, this should really be used as a background for your own work, of course. And it's important also that you link your own work into this. You have to do it when you apply for funding, but it's not important only because of that, because it's also the documents are very well prepared. There's a lot of good thinking that has gone into these documents, and so it's very worth it to have a look and position yourself in relation to the European, what I call European meta strategies in a way, because they're one step removed from the reality of a vocational institution. Often they're more made for the countries and for the education systems, but very useful. So that's definitely something that is at the background, but it doesn't stop there. There's also a lot of other documents and a lot of other information. OECD, for example, produces a lot of information nowadays also on vocational education and training and the need of the labor market and the skills in the labor market. CEDEFOP, the European Center for Vocational Education and Training Research and Data in Greece, Thessaloniki, they produce really high level, very good data and studies on the European VET systems, both on a European level, global view, but also country by country. So you can find a lot of data also here. And CEDEFOP cooperates, of course, with each and every country's own education systems and own authorities. So a lot of the information is information that has been gathered from the authorities. And the third body, if you're interested in cooperating with the countries just around the EU, so our neighboring countries or partner countries, or with countries a little bit further afield as well, is the European Training Foundation in Italy, in Torino. They produce a lot of information again and very good studies and valuable insights into the working life and the skills needs of the countries that are surrounding the European Union. And actually the information they have can also be useful to see your own systems in comparison to other countries. So even if you're not actually working with countries outside the EU, it can still be of interest for you. And these are just some examples. There's a number of other resources and data out there that can be useful for you when you work to position yourself and your VET system and your thinking within a bigger picture, which is a big part of what strategic thinking is about. It's about understanding the context that we are working within, both the national context and your sector's context, but also the international context and you in comparison to other countries. You know, what are we good at and what are we still needing to develop, but also what are the opportunities? Where can we learn from? Well, so if we still then step one step back from the European strategies or the information resources that are available on a European level, I find it helpful to take a view on the megatrends that we're facing in the world today. The fact is that this is work that many try to do, and there's a lot of information about where is the world developing today. This is, of course, especially important because of the hard times we're living in now with the pandemic. But it has been important for quite some time already. Because the fact is that the changes in the world at the moment are quite fast, they're quite interlinked, and they're quite hard to predict because they are so complex. So they don't have just one side. It's not so that there is a superpower that decides, you know, to give up, for example, some sort of weapons, and that affects the world politics. That question might happen. There might be a superpower that gives up some sort of nuclear weapons, but it has a link to to the global industry and business. It has a link to the regional developments, which has a link to global political developments. That superpower is certainly not alone on the global scale. It is linked to others, and there's a sort of a strange balance between different players in the world at the moment. So the field is not very clear, and there are complex links. And therefore, many future researchers and other bodies that are working with future trends have tried to find the sort of mega trends. What are the trends that cut through all of this? What are the trends that are more permanent in a way? They're not permanent as in like always there, but they at least don't disappear in a few years. They don't come and go. And in some of the work that we have done, we've used a model where we describe 4 different megatrends. And I think it's useful maybe to use this model here. You can find other models as well. This is not the right answer, but it's a helpful way of looking at it. And it is helpful, especially because it helps to position again you in relation to where the future is going. And this is a very important question when you're doing strategy work. So let's have a look at the 4 global megatrends that we've been outlining. The first we could call scarce resources. This is a megatrend that's heavily linked to the question of the environment, environmental protection, the development of or how we use natural resources in the world. The fact is that there's we talk a lot about how the environment gets destroyed by us using, for example, oil and gas as the fuel for our, and this is a big part. This is of course a huge question. Our atmosphere is being threatened by the emissions that we put out, especially the CO2 emissions, and we are using up slowly but surely the oil and the gas in the world. Some say that there is a lot of oil and gas and that this will never be used up, but the fact is that we are using it up. But it's not only so that these are the only scarce resources. There's also a lot of other resources in the world. One that isn't so often talked about is water. We have a lot of it in Finland, but many countries actually start to have a lack of water. So there isn't an obvious source of water in every country in the world. So it might be in years to come, especially if the world is developing warmer, a scarce resource, a resource that there is not around. Another resources are, I can't even list them all, but all the metals that are used in our electronic equipments, the ones that we are now looking at each other through, and on the cell phones and mobile phones. I mean, these resources are, many of them, very, very scarce. So the fact is that, yes, our natural environment is being threatened by our use of natural resources. But at the same time, these resources are also diminishing and some of them running out even, or they're very, very slow. So there's a connection to also economic situations. Some of them will become very expensive. And the water, for example, is an abundant resource in many places, but in others short of supply. So the fact is that it might also become in those areas very expensive. And so you can see that built into these sort of megatrends is both a threat to our lifestyle and our industries and our existence, but also a possibility for others that can answer to these needs. So if you are able to answer to water shortage, for example, through technological equipment or through just exporting water, you are maybe in a good situation also. So it's a threat and an opportunity. The same goes for what we call changing demographics. This is really about the fact that we have many countries in the world that are getting much older very fast. Most of the European countries are such, but also, for example, surprisingly enough, China is a country like this, where there's an elderly population that is living longer lives, maybe better lives also, but they're also growing bigger and bigger. So China actually has has a very big elderly population that is quickly growing much bigger. And again, this is just one example. There are other countries developing in the other direction. But the changing demographics means that there are countries getting younger, countries getting older. The balance shifts around the world. This is, again, both an opportunity and a challenge. It's a challenge, of course, from economic perspective, but for example, for the robotic legs that you see on the picture on the bottom, developed in Japan, which can help elderly people to walk, even if they have lost the use of their legs otherwise. It can be a real opportunity for a producer of legs like this, because maybe that can keep the elderly population still mobile for many years to come. And they don't need wheelchairs and help otherwise, for example. So this is, again, where you see a crossover between different megatrends, but in the area of changing demographics. The fact is also that something that we forget often, I mentioned China now, but another interesting area is the continent of Africa, which is, of course, a lot of different countries. Here you can see a picture of Africa with the area of other countries in the world placed into Africa. So this is, of course, a huge and complex continent, which is becoming really very, very interesting for both industry and business, but also for education and vocational education, especially perhaps in the years to come. The European Union has noticed this. Many of the countries in Europe have noticed this. And the fact is that Africa as a whole, as a continent, will play a big role in the years to come. And it's particularly important and interesting from the point of changing demographics, because here we have a continent that is young, and it's nearly becoming younger as we look at it. And it is also, as you can see from this map, huge. It covers an enormous area, a number of different cultures. It has a middle class that is bigger than the population of Europe, or bigger than the population of the United States. And that's the middle class, the class that is doing very well. It's not a poor continent only. It's a very divided continent with a lot of different things to it. So changing demographics in Africa is a very different question from changing demographics in Europe or China. I mean, and this you might well know, but still I'm highlighting it here because it's a part of the same story. Okay, so the third thing that I would like to bring up is, we call it a fancy name, technological planetarism, but it's really about the spread of the digital sort of outlook on life and digital environments. And of course, again, what we're doing now is a perfect example of this, but so is the example on the screen. That is a vocational education and training example. It's really a situation where there is a plumber that is fixing the pipes of a sink in a bathroom, and the plumber is the man on the wall, but he's not actually touching any of the pipes or doing any of the work. This is the lady or woman that is the customer that is doing this based on his instructions and what he can see through the glasses that she has on. And so this in a way describes again the crossover of the digital environment into how professions are changing. So there's a change in what future professions might look like. This might very well be the situation of a plumber. It is the situation already of some of the high-tech installations that are done in the world. They are done maybe by experts from afar that take contact exactly like this and instruct local personnel to install the equipment. And the fact is that this sort of technology, as we well know, and again, the pandemic and the corona situation was a good example of this. We very quickly moved into these sort of online environments that had been seen as very complex and very difficult before, but suddenly they were not. The fact is that also an app on a mobile phone that is made in Finland can spread much more quickly, perhaps in Argentina than it does in Finland, because there seems to be a market in Argentina for that app. And this is all made possible by the digital environments of today's world. So that's, in that way, the technology is on a planetary scale. It's right away available to the whole planet. It is not somehow limited to a country or to a locality in any country. And finally, of course, at the background of all of this, as you all know, is the globalization of the economy and how our economy today is more interlinked than it has ever been. We are not in any way possible to see that one country could develop separately from other countries. However, they can develop better or worse than other countries, that we know very well. But they are still interlinked, and definitely economic developments in one area of the world affect other areas very, very quickly. And this is not just in the stock market or in trading of certain goods or and so forth. It's in basic things like agriculture, for example. The fact is that if you want to today do efficient agriculture work, you do need to also follow the global trends and the prices and of both the for example, fertilizers or the seed, and then also how you sell your products. So it's a very interlinked economy. So here we had 4 different, and those were our 4 main views on megatrends. And I've added a 5th actually, which we have more and more started thinking that also means a lot in today's world: the role of networks. They both sort of harbor and carry power in today's world, and might actually, according to many studies, overpower national structures and international associations, for example. And the fact is that direct network connections in all those areas that we saw before can play a huge role. And this is interesting, of course, since you are representing networks of networks, within the education sector. I think this is a really nice example of exactly this, that the way you're working can really make a difference and change things, actually. Okay, so those were quick picture of the way of one view on how you can look at megatrends. But when you're working in an international area, it's not just these megatrends that last over many years that affect the work you're doing. It's also the actual current world events. We've mentioned the pandemic already many times. That's, of course, affected hugely things like international student mobility of staff and teachers. It has affected projects like yours. You would probably be meeting face to face, like Risto was saying, if it wasn't for the pandemic. And it has also made other things possible at the same time. And it has showed us maybe how we can also do some things a little bit differently and how vulnerable our societies are to both crisis situations, but also to things like health threats. Previously, not so long ago, our societies were shown vulnerable because of the refugee crisis. There's a picture of children in one of the boats in the Mediterranean, just below the pandemic picture. And the fact is that right now we seem to have forgotten almost about this. However, it's not an issue that has gone away, of course. The fact is that we're still seeing refugees entering or trying to enter Europe. And we're seeing movements of refugees both in the African continent, but also in the Middle East, and perhaps in some other areas also that are threatened by war or by different humanitarian crisis situations. One of them is, of course, Ukraine. We also have the questions of the Azerbaijan today and that area, and it seems to be that we're living a time in the world where crises do appear on a unfortunately steady path. And it's interesting how fast we can lose sight of what is going around us. A question that hasn't either been mentioned a lot lately is the question of Brexit. We see the girl there in the English flag, waving goodbye to her balloon with the EU stars on it, and this is just around the corner. We're only weeks away from the UK actually leaving the EU, and nobody really knows what this will bring along with it. It will certainly not be a crisis overnight, but what will happen over 1 or 2 or 3 years. There might also be some crises overnight, but those are maybe still small in comparison what can happen over a long time. And we definitely need to keep a focus also on that, despite the fact that we are living a hard time with the pandemic. And then we, of course, all know that on the world scale, the battle between the United States and China, I think we can call it that, both economic, but also for power in the world, it affects a lot of areas of the world. We can see it in the Red Sea, for example, between countries like Egypt, Sudan, Somalia, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen, where these countries and other countries are establishing bases to fight over a very important stretch of water where a lot of the world's goods are being transported. We can see it in international associations. We can see it in investment in developing countries. And of course, it's going to be interesting to see now how the switch from the Trump era to the Biden era will actually affect world politics, and how China will respond to this, because China has also gone up and down. I mean, now they're doing quite well again, but they also have had their own economic downturns, which have caused a lot of trouble. But the fact is that when you're working with international questions, these world events are not in direct contact, of course, with the question if you can send students abroad or not, except for a thing like the pandemic. But they do affect the whole setting, and they are important to keep in mind as a background to what you're doing. Of course, much more directly are then the changes that come from the world of work. And this affects vocational education and training absolutely in a straight line, of course. And the World Economic Forum already in 2016 said that 65% of children entering primary school today will ultimately end up working in a completely new job type that doesn't yet exist. Well, I'm not sure this exact number and this exact estimate is perfectly true, but there is something true about the nature of this. The fact is that there's a lot of changes in the world of work. There's a lot of changes in the roles and the types of jobs that are being carried out today. One example was the plumber that can work virtually in the future, perhaps. There's another funny cartoon from Richard Scarry. It's one of these children's books, but he has, for example, made a cartoon with a number of different professions that some of them are not maybe true, but they're funny anyways. There's the content creators or the content aggregators or the tech startup person or the brick and mortar dismantler, so not the one who builds houses but who actually like pulls them apart, or the web design complicator who makes web pages so complex that you accidentally click the ads that nobody anymore clicks voluntarily, and so forth. So a lot of funny new professions. Some of them might actually be true. What is true, though, is that the students that are going to our programs right now and who have been going and who will be coming and entering our training programs, they will be needing skills that are not just the directly today skills or the ones that he or she needs to have hands-on to carry out the work they have in front of them. They also will be needing good literary skills, numeracy skills, ICT skills, financial skills, and a sort of cultural and civic understanding to be able to work in a complex environment. They will need some level of creativity and communication skills to be able to work in more complex teams maybe than ever, maybe some problem-solving skills and collaboration skills, and definitely some sense of initiative and curiosity towards the new, and then also perseverance to be able to carry out much more difficult tasks and so forth. So this is one map of what has been called in English language sometimes the 21st century skills, the sort of future skills or more transversal skills that anybody needs in any sector, and that will play a bigger and bigger role in the future. And in my mind, and based on some of the studies that we have done in Finland as well, you can also see a link between how to learn these skills and providing international opportunities to our students. So it's one of the perhaps best environments to learn these sort of skills could be, for example, an international exchange. It's not the only environment. You can have other environments where you can learn this, but a mobility period in another country, in a foreign environment, faced with difficult situations, language difficulties, but also cultural barriers, and also like, the sort of newness of it all, it really develops both perseverance and communication skills and creativity perhaps as well, and can give you also a new perspective on life. So this is one way to look at these skills, but these are of course skills that needs to be provided to every student, not just the ones that go on mobility periods. So all in all, then, to sum this up a little bit, I've been speaking a long time already, but I was given time to 4 o'clock. So I have a fair bit to say in this area. But to sum it all up, I mean, I look at it like this: that there is a kind of strategy context that you make your institutional strategies within. It's affected by national strategies. Those can be very severe or very sort of strict, that they actually force you to work in certain ways, or they can be more like guidelines. I mean, that depends on your local environment, or your national environment. But they are part of the strategy context are national strategies. Another part is definitely the world of work within your sector or within your region or between the sectors that you're working within. But what are the demands and what are the developments that you see within the world of work? There are also local needs. Many times a vet college or a vet school answers also to local needs that are not only based on the world of work, but other needs also locally. So those need to be taken into account. And then there's definitely the European strategies, the global issues and developments, the megatrends that I was referring to, and the big questions of how the global development is going at the moment. Where will the focus of the world sort of shift? What will the role of China be? What will the role of Africa be in the future? What will the role of the rest of Asia be? And what role will North and South America play in this whole question? Depending also on your language sphere, this can differ a bit where you are looking in the world, because the world is not just one. It's definitely a number of strands, and there's a number of different networks that you can work within in the world. But they are a part of this strategy context as well. And it is very important to understand this context to be able to make smart decisions for yourself. And your institutional strategy, what it is really about is smart decisions. What are we going to focus on so that we can be a better institution, so that we can train our students better, be more attractive to our students, so that we can provide better skills to the world of work around us. So it is about making those right decisions. We cannot focus on everything. So we have to make some choices, and to have that full picture and that full information on the world around us to the best degree we can, it helps in making strategic choices for yourself.